Thanks. Welcome to our September edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIOs and EdTech Leaders webcast. I'm David Couch with the Department of Education. And for those that are new to this is something we do once a month for all of our districts and all of our Kentucky Education Technology System KETS partners and cooperative directors and their staff, along with our staff, and anyone else that's interested in joining it. So we give kind of what's going on at the state, even the federal level, and down to a district level. So I sent the agenda to you yesterday, along with a copy of the summary notes. And by the way, we're the only state in America, or DOE in America, that does this for districts, along with a variety of other things. But and I've never figured out why others don't try to have more frequent communication with their districts. But definitely, we're the step that we do is not broadcasting, but we do a written summary of that as well, and record it and always have it so people can see either the video or the written summary of it. So take a look at those for last month if you were not there, just a good reminder of the areas that we covered. As I told our staff, I'm always amazed when I'm looking at these things and I'm looking at the summary notes, the things that have changed so dramatically in even a single month. A lot of times it's just even a week or two. So please take a look at that. We covered a lot of information back in August. It's not nearly as extensive here in September, but definitely covered a lot in June, July, and August time for a lot was happening during that time. So I moved a couple things to the beginning of agenda. Marty Park, along with our Sean Jackson, will need to be over at the legislature at 11 o'clock to present on computer science, to be part of the computer science. I think Sean's leading that, and you're there as well. So I've asked a couple of things that Marty had to be moved to the top of the agenda before he takes off there. So Marty has talked about the academic standards for computer science, technology, and library media. It seems like we just did those a couple of years ago, but I guess it's been 6 years.
It has. So we are legislatively required every 6 years to go through a revision process for all academic standards. The three sets of academic standards that we work with most and actually help lead the efforts on our Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology, our Kentucky Academic Standards for Computer Science, and our Kentucky Academic Standards for Library Media. And so these three sets of standards they're on the official calendar to be go through the revision process right now through this school year. All the way through the legislative adoption process. So we just wanted to give an awareness item that hopefully you will be seeing a press release where for each set of standards, we will have an application process. If you have yourself or you have folks that know those standards, work with those standards regularly, and care about the revision of those standards. So the application process to be on the writing team, the revision and writing team, and then a survey that will go out that will help the writing team. It will help guide the writing team to ensure that we're focusing on updating or revising the areas of the standards that need most revision. And so that survey will ask questions about the standards that you may think need to be, whether that's at the concept level or all the way down to the standard level. So we're kicking that process off. Our academic standards for technology will go first, and you will see those announcements start to play out. We may reach out to some districts who we know are interested just to make sure that you see it. But please be aware, please be ready to shoot those applications out to folks that you know are interested, especially if you have awesome computer science teachers, awesome technology related folks who care about integrating technology into learning, digital learning coaches, library media leaders. And so Laura Raganos will be leading the efforts for the CAS for technology. Sean Jackson will be leading the efforts for CAS for computer science, and James Allen will obviously be leading the efforts for CAS for library media. So an awareness item, be on the lookout for it, and that'll be a fun process throughout the year.
I think, Marty, the only thing I think of that's changed dramatically in 6 years is the artificial intelligence. And so And as we were talking about those standards in general, I can remember even when the Audit Public Accounts was part of this, is talking about the standards and, at that time, likely the AI component. So there'll probably be some AI flavors in this.
We do believe so. We believe our writing teams will have some key topics that they'll want to bring forward, and we expect that.
Yeah. Next up is our Student Technology Leadership Program. I know it seems like we finished our state championship, but we're on to the next year.
Yeah, so as we all know, our Student Technology Leadership Program is a year-long program. It's not just one time in the spring. It's not a one-day event. It's a year-long program. So September is the STLP kickoff month. And this is the month when all activities start. Jeff Sobalski, Matt Pressline, and Aaron Wolford will be leading a lot of efforts. This week that we're in right now is STLP Get Recognized Week. And so we're excited about that. This is an annual event where we recognize STLP schools, share updated coach contact information, which is vital to the program. And we want to get STLP officially recognized on the STLP map. Jeff, Matt, and Aaron have a map where we help identify where programs are, existing programs, long-term programs, as well as new programs. So during the Get Recognized Week, we're shining a spotlight on all the exciting new stuff in STLP, which is important for folks to be aware of, including upcoming events in each STLP activity area. So that's exciting. I'm dropping in the chat. I'm dropping a little graphic in there that Jeff and the team worked on, and so pass this along. If you have STLP coaches that are new in your district and school, make sure they know that get recognized. That's important for this week, and this is Get Recognized Week. So let's move on.
I'm just looking at a note, and I don't know if you all got, but from Cameron Middle School, they're our state champion. Of this really sweet note that those young ladies wrote, and thanking us for our visit to their school district. So it sits right here on my desk here. That's a fun notes they get over the years, and that's the stuff they want over.
And I don't know if your note said this, but my note recognized that I had the highest drone points in the drone.
It did not say that.
I didn't think yours said that.
Mine does not say that. Marty, I know you brought this up, and I've asked Matt to talk about yesterday in our OET leadership meeting. There's a situation around Google Gmail. We don't. That's not a service that KD agency that provides districts. That's something that Google provides. But you brought up, and I know Matt's prepared to talk about it a bit. And we have a question about it. I guess this is a good opportunity to educate folks about the questions. When we had Go Soapbox, we would release all the questions ahead of time, right? For the most part. As we transitioned to using Teams for this, is what we found out is if we release them at the very beginning and we have X people join later, then we release them, they can't see the questions. So we're moving to the model, and just a reminder of, as we come up on a section, is releasing the questions. So for example, we're getting ready to do a question here on Gmail. So it's good, we can release that one. So if there's someone that's joining after this, then they're not going to see it. But we are interested in your input to that one. And this affects the certain emails that you may be receiving from beyond K-12 organizations. So Medjir, I'm also going to want to give you a chance to speak to this.
Sure. So yeah, over the last couple of weeks, it's come to our attention from a handful of districts and some folks here at KDE that if you're a Gmail district, or maybe you use Gmail for certain functions in your everyday life, mass emails or automated emails that would be sent to those email addresses seem to be getting blocked by their spam engine somewhere in the cloud or junk email. It's not something that you can see or release yourself. So it looks like we've got some responses right now. We're pretty close to 50%, that folks are reporting not receiving those. And so what we have done is we reached out to our contact with Google, and we are advising districts to open up tickets in the Google admin console and make them aware that you're not receiving email that you're currently waiting on. So we've seen that with some folks at UK, And we've seen that with other large mass emailing tools. So we just wanted to make you aware of it. If you hear of users saying, hey, I'm not getting certain things like a password reset notification, for instance, or something of that nature, that might be a place to look to see whether or not you've opened a ticket with Google, because we're seeing that and we're hearing it more and more. Again, this is not a technology that we administer. We're not in control of this, but the best we can do is we can make them aware of it. And and I believe that, so we're at what, 60% are saying no, 40% yes. And so I'm hoping those 40%, those 15 who said yes, have open tickets and have reported this so that Google can make some headway on it. Anything to add, Marty?
I guess the part I would say is of concern is Google has not been responsive. So things have been reported. So we want to make sure it's one thing to report to them, but they've not been responsive. I know we are trying to have a contact with them to try to increase the responsiveness, and something's getting jammed up, way up in the system, right?
Yeah, it appears these emails that Matt spoke about really well. They're at a higher level. they're not at a level where districts can identify them and release them from a spam engine perspective. And so working with, if you're aware, if you're in a district where you have reports of this, then we just want to keep eyes on it and try to help move it along the best we can.
And I would say too, in the chat, if you can put down, if you've been contacted, we know for like the University of Kentucky listserv, in Kentucky state government, state agencies use something called Gov Delivery. So I don't know, Dee Dee mentioned yesterday, she noticed I'm sending a communication out through Gov Delivery through our communications office that the Google sites were not receiving it. And she maneuvered, I think you talked about, Dee Dee, that you took out the URL and it started working. And there's something in the Google system that is not liking that. And we're trying to find what are the techniques to work around it. But would be interested in you just letting us know, beyond the University of Kentucky, beyond Gov Delivery, what other services are you aware of? Obviously, from the Department of Education's point of view, we have distribution lists, and we can use something other than Gov Delivery if it becomes really problematic to getting out to a large group of districts. But just let us know of any other ones that you're running into.
I do think it's important. Randy Bailey dropped a note in the chat. I do think it's important. Our school districts, 171 school districts, and the KDE, Kentucky School for the Deaf, Kentucky School for the Blind, we use either Microsoft email as a standard or Google Workspace for Education, Gmail as a standard for the email standard. And both Microsoft and Google are continually working on their protection measures. And so at times, we may see increased measures from Microsoft and then, at times from Google. And so I think this is just, both partners trying to help protect us the best they can, which is greatly appreciated. Being able to work through those strategies when we see either false positives or things getting held up when we need them to get through. Both partners work those in different ways, and so understanding that is I think really important.
Yeah, I think Stella, love Neil's comment. The artist formerly known as Kisty. That's great, Neil. Or Cass. And I'm seeing the what Stella commented on, and then Randy. Yeah, talented. Okay, that's good to know. So thank you for that. Matt, you wanted to share some things, a different topic about SMTP relay change that we're having here soon.
Yeah, so SMTP relay is a service that we've offered for years, and just like every other service we offer, every once in a while we have to upgrade that and make sure we're using a modern tool. We're in the process of doing that. We actually have rolled out a new tool that a couple of districts have been using for over a year now. Is the next generation for SMTP relay, and we're looking to move all districts to that starting September 30th. We're planning to make a change to the DNS for ketsmail.us And if you're pointing different tools and utilities at Gets Mail to US, you will just automatically move over due to that DNS change. Now, if you're using the old IP address, we're going to leave that system up and running at least until November 11th, so that we can transition off and take a look at mail that's still moving through there and reach out to the KEs and make them aware of if districts are still using that old service before we just shut it down. But we've had some success with the new system, and now we're at a point where we're ready to move everybody else over. So SMTP relay, that might be things like scan to email in your district and other things of that nature, parent notifications from certain tools. There's a lot of things that use that SMTP relay service that districts can configure. So we're going to be very careful about how we do this, but we want to let you know, and there's a notification going to go out here in just a few minutes if it hasn't already gone out this morning, letting you know about the September 30th date. So we just wanted to talk about that briefly on this, and then to see if y'all got any questions, you let us know.
Let me ask a question about voice services. Is that
I'm not sure where Tim's.
Or is that with the, I'm not sure what that was related to.
Hey, Matt, I think it's
Email messages. Okay.
There could be any number of things that a district would relay mail through. This service has been active in some form for probably the beginning of Active Directory. So could be vape sensors, scan to print or scan to email, anything, scripts, any number of things. So that's why we're going to change DNS first. It should be pretty seamless, and then be able to report on the IP configurations and be able to work with field staff and districts to get that moved.
Yep. Appreciate that, Kenny.
Thanks.
Yep. And it looks like, yeah, that notification went out earlier this morning, so you should have it in your inbox.
Okay. I see, Tim, Tim Simons, we're going back to about the email about voice services is what his was about. Okay. All right, thanks. Next up, Dee Dee Connor, our Chief Data Officer, with our data systems update. I know we have two questions, one about the school profile, one about the school report card dashboard. So we can release those. I think we can release those now, Dee Dee, right?
Yeah, go ahead. So the first couple questions are regarding the school report card and the school profile report. The school report card, we had planned for we were still planning for a phased approach this year, where we release the first part of the school report card to the public prior to assessment accountability data being available. The plan is on September 24th to close everything down to prepare for an October 1st release. What we're finding is we've got a lot of districts that have not approved data. I mean, high fives to you all, because about 2/3 of the access to technology data has been entered for schools. There's still some work to be done, but when I look at the approvals by domain, there's 24. What we can't tell at the state level is that because they just don't want to approve it, everything's good to go, don't worry about it, they just haven't done the approval process, or is it that they really need more time? And I'm not hearing one way or the other from districts. So if you hear that, don't hesitate to reach out to me and say, hey, my district is really going to need more time, because we're going to be having that conversation this week on whether we delay release or whether we stay on target and close everything down on the 24th to prepare for the October 1 release. So keep that in mind. The school profile report is a school level requirement, and that has to be in the local board office. So that has to be done through the school report card collector, and that has to be printed and all that. So once we close that portal, there's no ability to do that. So we understand it takes a while to get all the signatures, so we were thinking the 24th wouldn't be a problem. But again, if it is, please let us know. That's something that we can, keep in mind as we make some decisions going forward. The career and technical education and transition to adult life data did open up this week, so that's new. And that data is the most recent thing available to. Assessment accountability is still going to be probably October before anybody sees that in a November release. So just a few cases, our Infinite Campus updates. We do have a new virtual enrollment program indicator in Infinite Campus. So all full-time virtual remote students need to have that indicator selected. There's options, and that's part of that is around tracking virtual enrollment as required by legislation. So the other part I wanted to also mention is that we've got a fairly major data center update over Christmas this year. And we're giving you kind of heads up on this because it will require you to change the URL will change. So you'll have to change your connections with like your any LMS system, any OneRoster environment you have over the holidays. So Infinite Campus will be creating a ticket for and work directly with the districts on this. There is a schedule, and we've provided that information out in our cases newsletter. We just want to make sure the CIOs are all aware of that. I think maybe it's on the agenda to talk about in your all's October meetings. It wasn't in this month. And then one more thing I just want to mention is the CUES resource hub and enablement guide. It has been updated and it's available with all the rest of the CUES documentation. David, I think that's good for us.
I was just looking at the responses. Anything you want to say about the responses that you see so far?
Look at them.
The questions, yeah.
So not surprising. I know that the technology is not always involved in the school report card and the school profile report, but if you don't mind asking around and find out if you feel like there's problems with being able to get it done, ping me so that we can keep that into those kind of thoughts into consideration as we make a decision on whether to go on with the October 1st release or delay it, which would probably be a couple weeks. And we know that's fall break, so that's another consideration too. Districts that have fall breaks in early October, but there will be no public announcement, no media announcement or anything like that. It'll just appear. It's a soft launch for this initial release when it goes public.
Okay, Dee Dee, thank you. This next one has a question as well, and we used the information from last month. We're interested in the implementation of GoGuardian across the state. We had a very high percentage of districts that, for the most part, did the full transition, after school ended, maybe during the summer break or right when school started. And so the good news is, I would say, is, and while nothing's 100% perfect, you can always reserve the right to fuss, is at this time, it all I would say appears to be thumbs up with the GoGuardian implementation. Now, we're trying to understand why, though. And there's four but 4 questions that we have. It's going to take me a while to get rid of Go Soapbox that we have that are surrounding the status of it. And I'm going to have Matt talk about this a little bit, but I want to go through the questions before to give you some time. What we're after here is really have 4 choices in the questions. And what describes your district's, GoGuardian app version right now. And really it's for the Windows and Mac OS systems, because the Google systems, the Chromebooks use extensions. And so our 900,000, this was not an issue. It was the app version loaded that is on mainly the Windows systems and the iOS and the Mac OS systems. So choice number 1 is we have deployed 19.6 or higher. I know they're working on a higher version, but at least 19.6. In the Department of Education, through all of our offices, we have deployed it and had tremendous success. And I would encourage, and we have encouraged the KEs of each region for a district that has, and even GoGuardian, this was a suggestion by Jody Rose, a good one, is find 1 or 2 or 3 of your districts in the region that have transitioned in 19.6 and make the other districts aware of it, so they have confidence in it and aware of the good quality of it. And it's just increasing in quality as it goes on. The second one is we've deployed version 19.2 and things are running fine. The third one, and part of this is we've updated a version prior to 19.2, and either things are running fine. We've not noticed a problem. I'm going to give you the things with 3. We didn't have problems before, we really didn't notice them, so we still are on version prior to 19.2. Prior to 19.2, we are having problems, but we're willing to accept all the issues because we realize there's a future version that addresses it, and really couldn't fuss about it because we have chosen to stay on an older version. But I would say that one. And then number 4 is we are just running DNS filtering only for a very high percentage or all of the Windows-based and Mac OS and iOS systems in our district. And so that is a precursor. And if you could release that question. So Matt, I wanted to kind of go over that before you kind of spoke about this topic a little bit. So that's the background on the questions as you're going to give the answer.
Yep. So we've worked with GoGuardian very closely. They've been a great partner throughout this entire process. We had KDE was the first group to roll this product because we believe in, as David says, the champagne or the dog food. But GoGuardian's been great. We had some challenges initially. They've worked with us on those. We're seeing a lot of really good success with 19.6. It looks like of the respondents so far, 20 of 23 have deployed 19.6 or higher, which is excellent. But if you're still running 19.2, that caused us some issues here at KDE, which is why some of the fixes were in 19.6. And then every version prior to that, we had other issues that we saw. But this is definitely the most stable version that we have seen so far. And we don't have any major issues that we're working on with them to address in future versions right now. Not like we had before. There may be some small tweaks and things of that nature that they're incorporating in those future versions, but right now we're seeing 19.6 as being pretty stable for us. So it looks like, that's good. And so we've got 5 districts that are running DNS filtering only. So that's obviously we're providing districts with the tools that we believe that it takes to be very successful and run this at a very high level, both on and off campus for students and adults. So we just want to make sure that districts are seeing that. They know that those tools are available to you to deploy. And then we're just curious to get your feedback on here. So 6
Marty,
folks are running DNS only.
I'm going to let Marty has a comment with this.
Yeah,
Sure.
we just with our CATS engineers at the regional level, we do have a deeper survey that's gone out with the team. It gets into more detail here than what we've captured. We're trying to get as much information as possible so that we can move forward with the GoGuardian implementation. And we are also working with GoGuardian directly on what that reporting can look like from the GoGuardian level. But, just asking and working individually, district by district and region by region is always one of our best efforts. And so that wanted to mention how we're using those questions as well.
So just looking at some of the questions here. Let's see. Yeah, there are newer versions out. We're testing those. Paul Shoemaker does all that testing for us here internally. They provides a lot of feedback to GoGuardian. But I've not seen exactly where we are with that 120.2. I was out of the office last week on vacation. I'm sure that there's been some more progress made with that, but I'm gonna have to check on that.
We're also working through GoGuardian to help us identify the versions districts are on. So you have this survey, but GoGuardian wasn't at the place where they could tell us exactly. But what GoGuardian could tell us, which was concerning, which is kind of, we see it in the responses here. They had 13 districts that had not loaded anything on any of their clients at all. And there were 2 additional ones that you could see they've loaded it on 1 or 2. So there's a reason why I attached the state law in there, and there's national requirements as well. So having been part of the birth of that legislation back in 1998, it was just as equally important to filter as it was to track the activity. It's just not about filtering. One of the greatest deterrents, and also as I talked about, and we spent a lot of time on this last webcast, you can see the summary notes of folks not doing something, just like a camera outside a house or somewhere that catches activity, is it also can help you say it wasn't me that did something, or was someone that did something. And so the purpose of us getting a tool like GoGuardian and Lightspeed before it was just not filtering. It was the tracking of activity, internet activity logs. And when you have DNS only, you cannot track internet activity logs. And I can tell you, I want to make sure you understand, if there's a situation that happens in your district, there will be negative consequences if you do not have the tracking set up by individual. And this is just not for students. The law was very explicit that this applies for adults as well, that can be equally as a handful as the students can be. And so you really put it in place for both. So you really have to be able to track individual activity while they're on the internet. And so you do that in display reasons, but also you do that to prove, hey, listen, that wasn't me. I didn't do the following. So I'm just I understand, with the school, ending, and then you have summer break and beginning of school. But it is, I've talked to the commissioner about this as well, as a communication going out maybe from him to the superintendents to make sure they understand the requirements of the law are quite clear. The Kentucky law, and even if you look at the federal law, when you take these devices off the campus, they're no longer filtering anything. So they're not tracking on the campus or beyond the campus. When you're using DNS only, they're only filtering on the campus. And when you take those devices beyond the campus, you're no longer tracking their activity. And once again, that's we have Kentucky law that's for that, and also that talks about that, and also the federal law for E-rate, was very explicit about that, especially for the students, but for the adults as well. So I understand it, but I'm just telling you, those that are doing pure DNS, that's problematic. So this gives us a check. It helped us, the responses to this helped confirm actually the number that we were getting, from GoGuardian about those that have not done anything at all or very few. And obviously what we're going to be doing is having our field staff members approach those districts. So there may be something you are doing that's actually doing it. For example, you may just be using your district may only have a standard, they're only permitted to use the Chrome browser, and you're using the extension versus the client. Now, I'm hoping that's what's happening with all 15 of these, but I don't think it probably is. So we're going to get, we're aware of this data now, and sometimes when you get aware of it, you have to take action upon it. But I'm just telling you, it's going to be there are some severe negative consequences when an incident happens and you cannot produce internet activity logs, when there's clear reasons to do that beyond the law, but also there's law that requires it to be in place. So we're good with all the other scenarios. Be honest with you, is 19.6, you're at a good place. 19.2, you're at a good place. An older version is you weren't running into problems with it before that were significant, so you're just doing it, or you're just willing to grind through it and not complain about it because you're just going to hold tight there. We're not good with not having anything on those Windows and Mac OS and iOS systems at all. So that's a place we're not good with. So just wanted to make sure we reemphasize that, be emphasized even more. So what will probably happen as we are working with GoGuardian and as the field staff are collecting their data is it really depends on if the commissioner has to really get involved in sending something out, or we're just dealing with the few districts that don't have anything on them at all. We're also, and I know Matt, you follow through on this, is we have 14 districts of our 171 that did not transition to GoGuardian. There were a few of those that said they're going to stay with their current provider that they're using, but X number, it talked about an intention to transition sometime during this year. And so you're going to see, I know GoGuardian, I saw your note, Matt, is going to start following up with those districts to see what their status is on the transition. But the reason I mention that in this context is if there was hesitancy because of the version is now in a very good place. And that's why I'm going to encourage our field staff to get together when the next regional meeting you have some of those that to speak up. And once again, nothing's 100% perfect. So if you're one speaking up, it's kind of like at a restaurant or anything. People don't want to write down, hey, listen, this was a good experience, because they feel like, well, I never can fuss about it in the future. You can fuss. But I think the part to talk about and get some examples of districts is while nothing's 100% perfect, it's in a very good stable place. And I can just talk to you about here at the agency. We're at a very good place with 19.6. And as soon as, yeah, that's good to hear. 19.6 called all my internet tickets from Windows users, and it did the same thing for us. So thank you, Neil, for stepping up and mentioning that. I appreciate it. We didn't hear any kind of problems before with Munis associated with 19.6. I mean, I didn't even talk with our Munis staff, so it wasn't anything related to that. So I'm not related. That's something we specifically looked at. So I don't think it's related to anything with GoGuardian. But the Munis people on our staff follow up and see if there is. But I don't. My understanding, that's not a problem with it.
Yeah. The other great thing about this webcast each month is that much of our vendor community watches this, and I've already gotten a text from somebody at GoGuardian. I know they're on here and listening. So Ben, your question for Madison County about an issue you're having, I'll ask that GoGuardian follows up with me and let me know what the status is of that, and the same thing for you, Stella, in Franklin County. So I'll dig into both of those and see if I can figure out where those tickets are.
And we'll take a look at 120. I mean, 19.6 is a good place, but we're not fearful of 120, but we're at a pretty good place with it. And Matt, we'll talk about when we move to 120. But I wanted to give districts confidence in 19.6 before we're going to 20. And there's a thing, and we went through this with previous providers, where you get release fatigue. So we're trying to be cognizant of release fatigue as well. When there's a good solid version, you can stay on that version for a period of time, unless there's some big reason why you can't, survive with the older version. And like I say, people on 19.2 may say, listen, I'm good. We don't need 19.6. For us, we needed a little bit more than that, but 19.6 is a pretty good place. So we'll probably circle back again to this next month to see where we're at and get our feedback from our field staff. And I know the GoGuardian team is working on as well, giving us specific, unique, and accurate numbers about the numbers in every district that have done a transition and what version number that they are on, or if they've not done any transition at all for their Windows and their Mac OS systems. Okay, we'll move on to the connected user experience update. Chuck, you're going to be on this agenda for at least the next 18 months. So maybe it's shorter. Maybe we can get to that shorter time than that, but or maybe it's 2 years. We're trying to get it done, shorter than that 18 months. But,
well, it feels, I'll be honest with you, David, it feels like dog years some days. So first of all, I want a big thank you to all of our early adopters, our cohort 1 districts, for all of the effort and all of the work you have put in as we've launched queues. From my perspective, things are going extremely well, but it's hard. It's very hard. This is a very, very tough initiative from an implementation perspective. And we recognize that. At the end of the day, David and I were talking a few weeks ago, and at the end of the day, we've got 30 years worth of data in multiple systems that are all being connected together that we've got to clean up. And adjust some business processes around, all in the spirit of standardization and uniformity. And that's been hard. It's been really hard. Okay. And, our EdTech community, they're on the front of the bus. They're the ones that are driving this work, because what they recognize and they understand is on the other side of this, we're all going to be at a much better place once we've accomplished that degree of standardization and automation. All right. And we've gotten some great testimonies from people, but I just cannot overemphasize how hard this work is. I mean, when you really dig into the details of all that our EdTech community is working through right now with, group and OU mapping, with identity mapping for existing users, with log review, and you couple that with the fact that this is a brand new system that people are learning at the same time, it's tough. It's real tough. So, there is no easy button. I use that term all the time. Slow and easy wins the race. And I will just continue to emphasize to everyone, it's one of those situations where take your time, be precise, follow the lead of your enablement team. We've got a great team. We have a great product. And that team is continuing to improve the processes and the documentation every day. We want to make sure that cohort 2 that we've already started kickoff calls for has an even better experience than cohort 1. And there's a lot of lessons that we've learned as we went through cohort 1, and we're going to keep improving that process all the way through. So really, David, I mean, it's just a big thank you to the community, because we do recognize it's really, really difficult. It's very hard, but on the other side of it, we're hearing testimonies, even from folks that have dealt with a lot of pain, how they're going to be in a much better place on the other side of this. Okay. I have the opportunity on a regular basis to talk to I'll call them our founding 4. Okay. Jefferson County, Warren County, Owensboro, and Jessamine County. And they can all look back fondly at the times they went through when it came to data cleanup and working with HR and working with enrollment staff, cleaning up data, onboarding, going live, fixing broken glass and all that. And they'll smile and say, yeah, it was difficult. But they can also all 4 testify, all right, to where they're at today with a much better end user experience, a much more secure end user experience, and a lot of efficiencies that they've gained by just some of those goals that we've been able to obtain and we continue to drive for with Q's. So there you go, David. There's the Q's update.
Well, and I did talk about, I'll share that in our legislative meeting that we had 2 weeks ago about the Q's effort. And there's an interest in state government of doing, identity management of these systems. And when you're trying to tie in, you're trying to go to single sign-on and all the cybersecurity things, it identifies areas that have been lingering that needed to be cleaned up, and then you're now forcing those to be cleaned up. But as you can see, once you get to the other side of it, I mean, it's a outstanding place, and it lasts, for decades once you get to that place. But there's this tough work, this grinding work that it takes to get to these certain places, and this is one of those grinding areas. And the other part, in talking with my peer of other states that have kind of gone through this, one of the most difficult challenges is with their equivalent, whatever you call it in your organization, your HR part of your organization. They talk about these, Katie, the agency, does not have someone that works with HR organizations. And, so we don't have someone constantly educating them. So that's why we count on your position, and also maybe the chief financial officer, to educate them on this. For the most part, it's a blind spot for them. But they've talked about their transition to, something like this in their states, and just the challenge they've had with the HR part of just trying to get everyone to communicate, because now you're connecting to Munis, now you're connecting to Infinite Campus, now you're connecting to a variety of other systems for great cybersecurity reasons and efficiency reasons. But it requires that, for example, when someone leaves, that account is removed. Otherwise, Rapid Identity, when we're creating them, says, well, that person's still here, and there's a certain place that you got to identify, that person is gone. And when these were independent systems, again, Munis independently, Infinite Campus, it was no big deal. But now that you're tying them in, it's a really big deal.
Well, David, what you're getting at is when, in the spirit of uniformity, and I'm going to go back to, we started talking about this 3 or 4 years ago. And when I made the statement, or we made the statement, we got to get everybody doing everything the same way. Well, the depth of that is pretty obvious nowadays. Okay. So it is a situation now where if certain processes, certain attributes aren't populated correctly or followed, it now, it impacts access for students and staff. Okay, so, everybody in the same sandbox, cooperating, playing together, understanding how their work impacts their neighbor, all right, is super important. And there's not another person in the community that recognizes that more than our EdTech leaders right now, all right, that are working through this. So once again, much appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, do not take log review lightly. Exactly.
Or you'll circle back and you'll be doing it anyway, right? If you do not take it, but if you take it lightly, you'll be going back and reviewing it in the broken glass form.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you, Chuck. Enjoying hearing from you over the next 18 months, 2 years. I want to give a status Amy Young's going to give a status of our Office of Education Technology budget request. I'll preface her statement with this is I attended 3 or 4 weeks ago the opening ceremony, the ground digging of the brand new Johnson Central High School. And I attended the first generation of the high school, and now there's going to be a second generation of it. The reason I mention that in this context here is you had Senate President Stivers there, you had the Kentucky House leadership there, you had the senators and representatives of that Johnson County area there speaking. And the part that stood out to me as I listened to them speak was the importance of when you're trying to get additional funds to do something or to fix something or to ongoing funds for anything. It is so important that you do it from all different aspects continuously all the way to the finish line. It's not enough to mention it one time. So what Senator Stivers was talking about is there's a variety of folks, including, Superintendent Cochran, who did an outstanding job of the funding that was needed to complete the high school. When they originally got approval for the high school, it was X amount of dollars. And because of delays that were not caused by the high school, it went up significantly more. And so they needed funding to begin the ground digging, for it to start it. And so they had to come to the legislature and make that happen. And what this Senator Stivers was talking about that stood out to me is you got to be continuous with this, because he talked about the thing that made the difference on getting across the finish line. So I was looking at it through a different set of lens, obviously sitting there in the audience, listening to it, is the importance from people of all different angles, making sure you're educating legislators, not just once, but continually through this process. So obviously KDE is going to be, like the flea of constantly trying to get on. If you think about he gave a hot example of a dog collar that you have on there, and they're trying to get these fleas all the time to try to get on, and the dog collars and get off. Well, you got to be that flea that's constantly and persistently trying to say, listen, I'm not letting go. And so obviously KDE is going to be that in OET. We're going to give it everything we have. And districts are the ones that benefit by this, by the way, because if we do not get the funding, then the money shifts to you all paying, and you'll be paying 50 to 60% more because we're not getting the great volume discounts that we get is turning over to districts. So we're going to do our part. We have been working on our vendor partners to also do their part. And we have X number of our CATS vendor partners that are done, have lobbyists. We can't hire lobbyists at KDE, but our vendor partners and others can. And so they're going to do their part. There's a big component here of districts doing their part, and particularly your all's roles as CIO and in meetings that you're in. You're not saying, hey, listen, we still need money for SEEK and transportation and, preschool. All those were the board's top 3, but we're number 4. So always mention the context. Hey, we're for all those, but also we're at a point where we need the technology funding raised. And if we do not get it raised, then either services will be cut off, or the funding for those to pay for those will be shifted to us, being the district, and you'll be paying 50 to 60% more for that service. So it behooves you from a financial and operational, point of view to help us out with this. So Amy, if you can give us the the update, give you a little quick update on what we're doing on our part.
Yep. Thank you, David. And you brought up a lot of great points. This kind of most recent journey started in January this year with the additional budget request. We developed our initial request to submit it for board consideration. We've worked through several meetings and getting folks and shareholders and stakeholders aware of the need. We've been back to the board on the need in February. We've gotten that identification by the board of KET's additional funding being a top 5 funding priority going into the next session upcoming in January. That was obtained in June of this year. We've brought this before our vendor communities at our annual KET's vendor partner meeting in July. We've brought this up again in August with KBE when we got our KET's operational plan approved as part of a review before the board. And then obviously we've got our meetings coming up with school facilities construction commission on the 17th of September. So we continue to advocate for this. We also, had a pretty in-depth session on the additional budget request with the CIOs during the KISTI CIO Summit back in March. And obviously provided that one pager that kind of broke down a lot of the key talking points that districts can use when they advocate for the funding with your CFOs, your superintendents, your representatives. So that's definitely a key piece of information that you need to leverage and use when you have these conversations to really key in and hone in on the pressure points and what we're talking here about that will definitely impact students, the CIO, the superintendent across the district, for all teachers, students, administrators. Going back to the widening of the people gap compared to the number of devices, and that is a sustaining pressure point that you guys are incurring as well. Our need to kind of introduce and be modern, with our cybersecurity efforts. That is also a pressure point that we need to fund and sustain with 137 billion annual attempted attacks against our environment. We have to have that depth and that resiliency to keep everyone safe. So, with our 14.6, we're looking to address a lot of the cost of living impact that we have not received and been addressed since the early 90s. So we all know that the dollar does not go near as far as it did in 1992. So that is a huge key impact that we can't sustain. We've had $11 million over that same course of time in cuts. So obviously we're at a point where, in order to move forward and sustain what we have, we've got to have these fundings. And as David, you pointed out, if we have to make a decision, we don't get that funding, and we're going to have to transition that cost somehow, so that we can, look forward and make sure that we have our cybersecurity kind of projects and initiatives still ongoing to keep our environment safe and maintained. So again, we can't stress it enough. Our budget, our additional budget request is going before the governor's office as part of the KDE budget submission. Those are due to be turned in October 1st. At the same time, it gets turned into the legislatures so that they can start their planning process to develop budgets going into the session. So again, it is a team effort. It is not an individual or select groups. We all have to kind of press that forward to the goal line.
Thanks. And obviously, the teaching point here, we're trying to make sure you understand this impacts you in districts. This impacts you. This impacts CIOs tremendously. So one of the things impacted, if we do not get that budget increase annually, is the KETS offers assistance. And the reason I know that's important, in the top 5 feedback I get every year, we talk about, you tell me how important that is. Well, we will have no choice but to start reducing the KETS offer of assistance. We are at that point, unless we get some kind of funding source to pay for these increased costs of things that have happened since 1992. That's one example. The other things is certain services get turned off, and either you stop doing them or you start paying 60% more. So it's all coming your way, and so you got to be thinking about this. Well, this doesn't really impact me that much, so I'm not going to get involved. As I always say, is anything you're wanting to do is a hallucination unless you have funding behind it. So we want to keep on having funding behind what we're doing. And so we got to get, our districts and our CIOs really energized with this. We are getting our vendor partners energized with this. Obviously, we are energized like this. We have worked on our state board, our leadership here, and got them energized about it. And it's got to be consistent all the way to the finish line. Because I do want to hope be sitting there someday, just like I was sitting there for the new Johnson Central High School, and you have, giving people high fives because we made it across the finish line and addressed this. Thank you, Amy. You're speaking of the School Facilities Construction Commission. I present to them tomorrow. That is the final step before the KETS offers of assistance are released, and so I appreciate all the good work the SFCC has done for us since 1992. And being a great partner, and it's a great partnership between two different state agencies and helping us get all the offers of assistance to districts initially, the first round and the second round to them throughout the school year. So anticipate that'll be approved tomorrow. We just educate them on it. Last month, I talked to you about the Corporation for Public Broadcasting's funding being 100% cut. That directly impacts Kentucky Educational Television. 2 weeks ago, they informed 25% of their staff that their positions were being eliminated due to the cut in their funding that they've received annually since 1970. So this is a pretty devastating cut to Kentucky Educational Television. These are services and folks that provide programming for schools and students while they're at home and while they're at the school building. And they're still trying to grapple with, what do they do next with this 25% cut and trying to do the best they can. I'd also say this is when that cut was announced, it does not just affect Kentucky Educational Television. It impacts radio stations specifically in rural parts of a state. And I read an article in a national newspaper last week that gave live examples from states and radio stations that have had, because they were counting on that funding every year, 60% of their funding has been reduced on average in these radio stations. And so they're grappling with how can they sustain as well going forward. So it is a major impact, just not to Kentucky Educational Television, but keep in mind to radio stations, particularly in poor areas of a rural part of a state, it's going to be pretty devastating to them. So just want to make sure you're aware of that and give some, some grace to those in your radio stations locally in KT because of the things they're going to have to cut going forward. So let's talk about the recent and upcoming legislative committee meetings. Marty Park left us to go to attend with Sean Jackson about the computer science and AI literacy. That is starting in about 2 minutes. So you saw Marty exit the room. So I also presented back on September 10th to the Information Technology Oversight Committee. And this is a group that meets monthly. And we were Katie was asked to be there. Myself and Mike Lettingham and Bob Hackworth went and represented Katie at that. And I wanted to go over a couple of items with you. And you can watch the actual broadcast itself if you want to do that. That was on YouTube. But I want to hit a couple of the key points from that, which I think are worthy of hitting on. That committee, along with the Auditor of Public Accounts, was very interested in states moving to the model that actually we have, where we are mainly a broker of services versus a builder of them. Meaning we do bids, we work with vendor partners for major large-scale systems that affect all districts and KD organizations. I could tell when the Auditor of Public Accounts was asking our questions, they were super impressed compared to the other states they deal with, of us having moved to that model and operating that model since, the 90s. And this legislative committee and state government, and it's not the first time, they regularly use Katie the agency as an example of what they're looking for going forward. And so part of it is they're looking for legacy technology systems that are outdated, use obsolete software, hardware, and infrastructure. Despite its days, continues to be used because it's critical to the organization's operations are too costly or complex to replace. So Katie the agency moved off mainframes back in 1995. However, there's a very high percentage of Kentucky state agencies that still use mainframes, which I'm always shocked about when I hear all the different agencies here in state government that are presenting. And they still do major systems that are in-house, homegrown, developed, even though there is commercial systems available out there. And so the thing that we share with them is typically we go off the shelf cloud-based. And if we do have something that is in-house, as soon as a good quality product is available to go cloud-based and off the shelf, we go to that. And the example I gave is the Kentucky Educator Credentialing System that previously, when the Education Standards Board was a separate organization, the KDE, they created, seems like it was over 100 different homegrown programs. And when KDE got that, it was problematic because all the programmers that had developed that programming shot over the years by Professional Standards Board had been reduced by 80 to 90%. So they didn't have the staffing to really maintain it. And it was the same time that cyber criminals across the country were targeting homegrown educator credentialing systems. And you can read about the articles of different states that had theirs broken into. So we did a full court press, really quickly did a bid. We knew at that time there were 3 to 4 major companies that focused in on that and did that well, did a bid, and we transitioned over to that. So, but there's also in organizations, there's nothing off the shelf, there's nothing commercially available, there's nothing high quality. So you stay with those for a period of time because there's a functionality need to do that. But typically, our approach has been with nearly everything we have, it's already cloud-based and it's off the shelf, and we're just managing and broker that services versus the builder of it. But there's always going to be in organizations until it reaches that point, the need to do some of that, and so that's recognized as well. And we definitely have that same kind of approach here at KDE. The other part of that was really focused in on. Oh, by the way, before that, Chuck, I did talk about our identity management system and what we're tying all in together. I mentioned that a little bit earlier and the importance of that. But also cybersecurity was there. And I talked to them about just not the widget part of cybersecurity, but what you have to have. But it's also the other parts. So first of all, you got to have savviness of staff. You can have the most super techno widget cybersecure environment, but if you do not have the savviness of your staff of giving up their username and passwords, you have a high percentage of them doing that. And definitely don't have MFA on. They've refused to do that for whatever reasons. Well, your prime, it only takes one of those to get in that account. And then that cyber criminal parlays that account into damaging things within the district because they're pretending to be someone whose account that they're really in. So Bob, you always say this, everybody's account has a super sensitive information in it, or can be weaponized, even though they may not feel like they have anything in there. And so that was the first teaching point with them. The second one was talking about the product standards that we have in place compared to the other 49 states, to where we use the same information system and financial management system and high-speed network and a variety of other things that have allowed us to make it more difficult, not impossible, for cyber criminals to do very destructive things, across our state. And we're a cloud-based system, and we've shifted and shared the responsibility. And the good thing about shifting and sharing with vendor partners is we do not have the staffing to watch our data systems and technology systems 24/7. We can't watch them in the weekends, the weeknights, the holidays, but it's nice when you can share and shift that risk to someone that is doing that on your behalf. And Bob has just shared some of the stuff about CSUN there. That's good. That's good information as well. I also spent time, which I think is important time, about the healthy data diet. And I want to spend a little bit more time today with them. If there's anything I got from the Power School incident in other states, is the wear and tear this has on individuals when they have been successfully broken into by a cyber criminal from the CIO position, your all's position, your technology leader position. It is wearing, it is crushing on that individual. So any district that's had that happen, any statewide level CIO that's had that happen, I can tell it is crushing, because it is like 3 jobs on top of your current job when that happens in your organization. It is all time consuming. And the part that stood out to me from one of my state equivalents is they say, thank goodness, David, that we did not have social security numbers of students in our student information system, or this would have been another level, 10 times, 20 times level of crushing across our state. As bad as it was of them being able to get into our, this was an infinite campus system they got into another state. But I could tell, having just met with, in a meeting with my peers, less than a month ago, the wear and tear that it has had on her. Meaning she already has a full plate, just as I do, just as you all do. But when this stuff happens to you, in districts that have had this happen, know what I'm talking about. It is like having 3 jobs on top of your already current day job. So the reason I mention that is you want to avoid that happening. And one of the ways to avoid that happening, and I'll go back to my U.S. Army time, is you reduce the target area size. You do not have all the social security numbers of all the students you've ever had stored in your system. Because Bob, we regularly say one of the most valuable, if they know the most valuable target in K-12 is a student social security number, because they parlay that into getting credit cards and cars and houses before that student graduates and tries to get that themselves. So they've almost ruined, or have ruined, that student's credit history even before it begins. But they know they'll go undetected for long periods of time. So that's why you hear us so focused on student, social security numbers, because I know cyber criminals, that is one of their top targets. So one of the goals of all these data systems, for me, is let's get rid of student social security numbers. And I can tell you, Kentucky is not a leader in this. Of all the areas that we lead in, which I'm proud of, this is not one that I'm proud of. That we are not a leader and we're very susceptible to problems associated with this area. The first one is, if you have large stacks of student social security numbers that have long graduated in a school system, in a Kentucky state agency system, you are on low ground to justify that. Because when that system gets broken into, like this one did in another state, they had just not their current students, they had decades worth of social security numbers of students that had long graduated, along with other information. Like, why you still have that older information? I get a student transcripts, or certain parts of student transcripts beyond there, but we moved to, a unique student identifier decades ago with the Infinite Campus. The other states beyond Kentucky are using other identifiers beyond social security numbers to identify their students, not just on their DOE, but other state agencies. They have moved way past that for the reasons I'm telling you. So Dee Dee presented last month a tool that's available right now to districts to go in and clean up that old data. We have done our part on the state system at KD of cleaning it up and removing it. We have a meeting tomorrow with Kentucky Stats. I think it's tomorrow, right, Dee Dee? Or the next day, about Kentucky Stats, about them moving away from using initially 9 digits of social security number and eventually using none. We're also working on other state agencies, because really we know districts internally do not use social security numbers. The only reason they're collecting them is for Kentucky state agencies. That's the only reason. So we're trying to get, and that's why I presented to the legislators, it needs to be a goal of Kentucky government to get moving away from student social security numbers. I'm not talking about adults right now. I'm talking about the focus is on student social security numbers. So I laid out the kind of things we're trying to do to wean people off of using social security numbers, student social security numbers. And even my discussions with other states like Tennessee, where they've heard me present this concern, Tennessee has moved away from using them as well. So if there is, any organization that says, we got to collect them because we got to give them to Tennessee for students that are on some kind of program. Well, Tennessee recognizes it's not a good thing to be on either. So they've moved away from it. So I did use the opportunity to talk about the goals. Bob and I, we talked about with our board members and even here folks within KDE of the desire to move away from Social Security numbers. So I definitely used that opportunity to do that. So the next part that they talked about that they wanted an answer on is the importance of the internet to Kentucky K-12 schools. So I shared with them, and I want to share with you because it's just not the CIOs watching. We have other people in the audience that are watching, that it's important that our legislators know in any kind of setting that I get in front of is the importance of the Auditor of Public Accounts report. And so I read off and I provided 6 sentences, not to our board, but to any audience. And so I've copy pasted them into your summary notes. So if you take a look at the summary notes about APA, I've done that, but I'm going to read the 6 sentences for those folks that did not get that, because I think this is an important setting for what the legislative committee was after, is the IT oversight committee at that question. So it says the Kentucky Education Technology System, KETS, is highly regarded as a forward-leaning, innovative approach to statewide school technology. KD's technology functions are highly regarded by district superintendents. Since creating KETS in 1992, the Office of Education Technology has strived to be a leader in innovative K-12 education technology with a mindset for continuous improvement. Numerous systems and technology resources are provided statewide, and KD facilitates the collaboration between districts. Kentucky's educational technology effort is well organized and planned under the umbrella of KETS. KDE equips school districts statewide with technology systems and services that other states of Department of Education do not provide. Some of those common technology functions and capabilities provided to public schools across the Commonwealth by KETS are the Student Information System, in collaboration with the districts, the Financial Management System, Internet bandwidth for every district, which they are interested in, our Regional Engineer Support Services, the facilitation of our district leadership collaboration, our instructional technology leadership, and that's our digital learning coaches, the school technology leadership programs, cybersecurity, internet functions, learning management systems, and email and other common applications. So I want them to have that background, and as any audience I do is some confidence in what we've done. And this is a high five, just not the current folks in districts and our vendor partners in KDE, but going back 30 years, which the auditor did. So anyone that's had any kind of role in this over the past 30 years, that's a high five kind of feedback. And typically, as you know, in audits, they're not there to kind of appraise and give high fives to what you've done well. So what I did next was I talked about, just educating them on where we were at with our NGKI, which is the next generation Kentucky K-12 internet service. We've just passed the first 12 months of using that service for all districts. That is a 10-year contract that all districts and KD organizations use, Kentucky School Deaf and Blind and KD agency here in Frankfort. The feedback from districts and superintendents, both in your top 5 feedback, which we use, and from the superintendents and other staff feedback from the audit, NJKI has been a grand slam in every meaningful way, and our districts are extremely appreciative and satisfied with our NJKI services. They also are interested in the continuity of services. So I talked to them about, continuity of internet is just not about the flowing of electrons. It's the functionality, the quality, reliability for at least the same amount of bandwidth, for no more than we're paying now for a federal E-rate eligible contract that saves us 85% in the cost. So that gave them the background. And then when they were asking, well, what would happen? It's much like I do with STLP students. I ask them the question, what would happen to you if we turned every technology thing off or took it away? And I always will say, we're not really doing that, but it helps you understand what is really important and meaningful to do that. So I also asked the generative AI tools. I asked Grok, and I asked ChatGPT and DeepSeek and Gemini and Copilot, and I said, what would you be noticed and felt the most in Kentucky K-12 internet, and you can do the same with them, was suddenly turned off for a short or extensive period of time in a school district. And it gives really good answers that encapsulate what it means from an instructional point of view, you know, from the 1.2 million computers we have, 800,000 student and adults, and all the cloud-based systems that, and we're a national leader in the cloud-based systems, but it affects our, you know, attendance systems, our grades, our student records, the transfer of those records, district staff payroll and finances, safety and security systems, surveillance cameras, which you all are familiar with, all kinds of communication within the district, your phone system, your email system, any kind of video conferencing impacted your transportation. Districts are heavily using the internet for transportation, your food and point of sale systems, your online testing, whether it be daily or every or quarterly or summatively at the end of the year, college and career readiness skills. And once again, the generative tools go more in depth with these, the differentiated learning, the content and creation delivery for the students, for the classroom teachers, the classroom management tools and lesson planning and assistive and adaptive technology. The last item on that agenda, September 10th, was a discussion of the Kentucky Communications Network Authority and related proposed legislation that was being proposed. Overall, you need to educate you, to give you a little bit of background on that, is Kentucky Wired, which you should have heard by now, is it was brought around and on the 2014-2015 timeframe. Kentucky Wired is managed by that organization called the Kentucky Communications Network Authority. KCNA manages both the public side of connectivity to their resources through Kentucky Wired, and that would be the state police offices, that would be the state parks, transportation cabinet, education organizations like KCTCS and the 8 public universities. And then it has a private function that we use in Kentucky K-12 for districts and KD agencies, because we have to do an RFP for E-rate eligibility. All these other organizations, there are no E-rate discounts for them. And so we have to go through a purchasing process, an RFP process. And really, the most appropriate organization to respond to that is from their private sector, which is made up, ENA by Zayo won that bid for us, but they subcontracted through Excelicom, which is part of the KCNA environment. Now, we also get Fortinet through them as well. So that's the background of who they are. Now, KCNA currently overall has the leadership and functionality to manage those services. Now, one thing I'll just point out, and going back in time, and this goes back to 2014 and 15, the folks that were involved with KCNA were extremely over-optimistic in 2 areas, in 2 aspects. And these are areas that KD challenged the accuracy of and likelihood of happening back in 2014 and 2015. The first one was how fast it would be put in place, Kentucky Wired in every district across the state. We were told in various meetings, and then it was even published, that it would take Kentucky Wired 12 to 18 months to get in place across the state. We challenged that and said that's not possible given our experience in doing large scale. We said instead it would take 8 to 10 years is what it actually, and that's what we proposed, and that's what it actually took. The other key component of that is it was proposed that it would bring in $70 million in revenue per year, in profit revenue. And we challenged and pushed back on that and said, we don't understand how it would bring in that amount of money. So currently it's bringing in $5,000 a year in revenue in the past 4 years, not $70 million. So both of those, the reason I mentioned in this context is that was brought up in that last item of a recognition by legislators that this is not going to bring in $70 million per year. And the part in the private sector part is selling the dark fiber. And is there that much of a demand for dark fiber? But there was parts of the state that didn't have it, but there is a very high percentage of state that did have dark fiber. The other one is selling the lit services. Would there be enough demand to bring in $70 million for both of those? And what I heard is the recognition is it's not going to bring in $70 million a year in profit. And that's a good recognition to understand it's not going to bring in that amount of money. So part of the legislation, just to make you aware of, that's being proposed and that's what the session was about, the end part of that was about, is on for the KCNA current leadership and functionality to be transitioned to the Commonwealth Office of Technology. And the Commonwealth Office of Technology was also one of the providers. That's Jim Barnhart, who is their CIO, and that's the form that I sent you. And also changes to the KCNA's current board membership and leadership. So that's what that legislation proposes. And the part I could get from listening to that legislation, they're actually hoping it doesn't come to that being proposed and acted upon, that things will be done before that's proposed to address the legislators' concerns that's been identified. And by the way, this topic has been part of 2 or 3 different legislative sessions, legislative committee meetings over the past 2 months. So wanted to make you aware of that, and you have any kind of questions. I know that our CATS field staff is prepared to answer those. All right. Next item on the agenda. This next item we have on the agenda, I'm trying to find my spot here.
That would be
David,
the health equity.
the next item,
Yes.
I'm gonna,
That's you. Yeah. Go ahead, Bob.
Or Mike?
no, you, go ahead, Bob.
Okay. All right. So I feel pretty lucky sometimes, especially, having lived so close to Kings Island, I can get on the Beast almost anytime I want. And I've been riding that thing probably dozens, if not hundreds of times since 1979. There's this one area, though, in it where it's a spiral. And if anyone's been on that, you know which one I'm talking about. And every now and then you get a call and you kind of feel like you're in that spiral, and you, especially in cybersecurity, and you wonder, where's this spiral going to go? When do I get out of this spiral? And so here just recently we had some communications with 17 districts because we had 43 staff folks. I'm really excited we were able to kind of keep it pretty low. 43 staff folks whose accounts were compromised, and then they were used to log into the Health Equity HSA FSA app, which is flexible spending, that sort of thing for your health accounts. And they had reached out to us because they had seen those happening, and we had some folks who lost money that way. And so we are still in communications with the Health Equity folks. We've been in communications with them since August when this first occurred. And some of the big questions were, how did the accounts get compromised? The CATS accounts, the CATS email accounts, those staff accounts. And there were a couple of things that popped up to us. One, some folks weren't using super strong passwords, apparently. One of the things that we definitely were able to see was that some of these folks, probably a large percentage of them, were not using MFA or did not have MFA required for their accounts, even though it might have been enabled. And so there were some common strings that we saw. The 99.9% of these accounts were from districts who were using Google as their, I guess, IDP. And, we're still looking at that. This is not 100% over. We feel like it's probably pretty close, 99% over. But we had some lessons learned because of this particular security incident, and I wanted to kind of hit those items right now. One, don't wait on queues to get your MFA to 100% or as close to 100% as you possibly can, because the cyber attackers are not waiting on queues. They're waiting on us to provide them, a hole to get through. Get your MFA as close to 100% as you can right now. Whether queues is coming up in a couple of weeks for you or whether it's a couple of months away, go through and make sure that not only is MFA enabled, but it's actually on and functioning with all of your staff accounts. Educate your staff, and you might have to also talk with some of the vendors that your staff work with. Educate your staff on the dangers of reusing their CATS accounts, their CATS credentials, for other services, that especially those personal services. Like, even though an HSA or FSA may be somewhat related to being at their job every day, I would consider that to be a personal account, just like an Amazon account or just like a bank account or something like that, very similar to a bank account. And I wouldn't really advise you to use your KETS credentials for your bank account. So I wouldn't advise you to use your KETS credentials for your HSA. I think that's something that I would get in and change. Even if your initial account is using your KETS credentials because it's easier, I would go in and change those, and I would recommend that you talk to all your staff and say, hey, keep those separate. And then I also want to point out that we've been working with the Department of Personnel and the Kentucky Employee Health Plan folks, and they sent out a letter, and they wanted everyone to kind of change their passwords, and so that kind of brings up very quickly, and I'm just going to kind of blow through this. Nevada had a statewide security incident where a lot of their state level websites and services went down, and that was bad enough. That was because of some hackers got in there with ransomware. And so they had a press conference, and they announced that they were going to ask all of their employees across the state to change their passwords. And as soon as they did that, it's really interesting. They saw their attacks go from like 150,000 a day to 150 million hits within 72 hours after they had that press conference, and their phishing numbers just went through the roof. So what I guess the lesson learned there is, one, transparency is amazing. It's wonderful, but don't be too transparent. Don't give too much aid and comfort to the enemy, and make sure that you are in a defensible location before you start announcing what's been going on. And so I think that's super important to do. And David, I'm going to kind of leave it there. If there's anything that you feel like I needed to hit, why don't you go ahead and jump in there, or we can move on.
I did emphasize to legislators with our transition to identity automation, we are forcing MFA and no longer making it optional. Because the lesson learned through this one is the districts that have not, or individuals that had not moved to MFA, most likely this would not have happened. Very high probability would not have happened. So that even those 17. So I know our field staff is working with the districts about the importance of MFA being on all the accounts, because that appears to be a very common denominator on these 17. And also, I think common denominator why there was not much success beyond these 17. It just shows you the very high percentage that we have already on that. Mike, we talked about virus protection extensively last month. I know we were just going to do a quick poll question on trying to always keep it in mind of the folks' this transition for KDNC providing virus protection. I know you were just going to do like a poll question to it.
Yeah, we just wanted to remind folks that we've got in the end of the fiscal year in June of 2026, the Trellix product standard and our statewide purchasing of that on behalf of all districts will come to an end. It was probably a year ago that we announced that this was moving this direction. So we wanted to give a reminder to folks and get an idea of where folks were at. We've got a poll question that popped up there about how many have already moved with what product they'll be using forward, and how many have a plan to do so, or how many are kind of don't have really an idea yet. So really, it's just a friendly reminder of that, and to also, which I think we might have mentioned last month, but if not, we did release some endpoint protection recommendations. I think the K's probably distributed those, made those available, and they're also available on the website under our standards and purchasing page. So certainly look at those for guidance, and then obviously there's assistance that can be made available if you need help in making and having a plan to move forward to put your solution in place.
Thanks for those who have responded. If you haven't yet, it'd be very helpful if you did to this particular, in all the poll questions, but this one here.
David, we have one additional poll question. Do you want me to go ahead and launch it as well?
What is it?
The Cybersecurity Awareness Month.
Okay, yes, sir. Go ahead. And while you're doing that, I'll just say that a different topic for our next month's webcast would normally be on the third Tuesday. We're instead going to do it during the next Kentucky Association for School Technology folks fall conference in Lexington, which we announced last month. So we'll be on the block there. So obviously the folks that are attending that live will hear it live, and then also will be broadcast virtually. So please join us for that. And let's see what the responses are. Yeah, just we give almost a cybersecurity awareness every month, don't we, Bob? So I know we do that, try to make you be aware of that. So appreciate you joining us today. We'll end for our no later time than 11:30, but I'll stay on here for anything for anybody who has any questions. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for all what you do out there for our staff, our vendor partners, and for our districts. See you next month. Take care.